Hey everybody, it's Pastor Robert, and happy Holy Hump Day. It's June 17th. This is the second week of doing this midweek time of inspiration and just reflections from me, and to offer this to you to break up your week a little bit. Had some good feedback from last week's first Holy Hump Day thoughts. Last week we talked about the race riots over the George Floyd killing in Minnesota. And we talked about the protests that were happening in our own town of Athens. So I wanted to just do a little part two with that for this week and take it a little different direction. Last week we talked about the systemic racism that's prevalent, that we're all to some degree part of, and then also individual racism where we might act in such a way just from a personal level that's very prejudicial, and we always need to be reflective of that and confess that and see that in light of our faith, which our faith is to be an inclusive faith where we welcome all people. But this week I thought we'd talk a little bit about how these protests and this racial divide at this time in our country and in our world gives us an opportunity to think about how we interpret the Bible differently. And it depends on our perspective of how we approach the Bible. So I think it's important for us to see the Bible not just from our vantage point, whatever demographic we might represent, but to also see the Bible from other approaches, from a minority approach, from a racial approach, maybe a feminist approach, a third world approach. Because if we only see the Bible from our approach, we'll be very limited in how we understand the scriptures, and that can be to our downfall. And that means that in our faith and how we approach the scriptures, we need to have a more fluid approach where we are always growing and evolving in how we see the scriptures. I've changed my stances on certain things many times over the years, and it's only because of these other ways of looking at the Bible. I might have a friend who points out something that I had never seen before, just from my personal experience, and that helped me to see the scriptures in maybe a more holistic way. And so that's an important thing for us as we look at the scriptures, that we see that sometimes we just see it from our one perspective, but we also need to see it from other perspectives. And you hear the phrase white privilege being used a lot, and there's a lot of people that react negatively to that, and they don't want to hear about that. But the truth is that any perspective we have can limit us in how we view the scriptures, and we need to realize where maybe our white privilege is so that we can see that and have that as a checks and balance gauge to how we view scripture. And so I want to offer that to you today on this Holy Hump Day. Remember that when you interpret scripture, you're interpreting it in the way that you've experienced it, and which is a good thing, but to also realize that that's not the end of the story, that there are other perspectives, especially from other Bible scholars and people from maybe different faith traditions within even Christianity that can help us to see the scriptures in a new light. And so that's what I offer to you today, and that's what I want us to do as a church, to always be growing in our understanding of scripture and in the interpretation of scripture. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, Holy Hump Day. Wow. That's a very loud car going by our house. So anyway, blessings to you, and know that you are in my prayers and thoughts.